and welcome to the garden on what is yet another truly glorious spring day. This is more like the sort of weather we'd expect in the middle of summer than in early spring. But that is all soon going to change, and the temperatures that are forecast for the next few days have me a little bit worried, and I'll show you why. Our cordon pear trees are now in flower, and the bees have been working these really hard all day, which is great to see. But here in the south, the temperatures are forecast to drop, well, anything from -2 to -4. And if we get a really hard frost, it's quite likely that these blossoms will suffer some damage. Now, we might not get any fruit, or the fruit that we get may be malformed. So I am rather concerned about that. One benefit is that we do have tons of blossom here, so it doesn't matter if we lose a portion of our fruit, but maybe some of these that are yet to open might survive a little bit better. Earlier in the year, when the peaches were in flower and we had some unseasonably cold conditions, I hung some old sheets in front of them to give them a little bit of protection, and I think I will do that again. Even though the flowers have gone over now, the young fruitlets are very small, and I suspect at that stage they're also easily damaged by cold. So I think it would be a good idea to protect those, but I can't see any way to easily do the same for the pears. I simply don't have the materials to hand to do that. I don't have nearly enough fleece or plastic or old sheets. So they're just going to have to put up with whatever is thrown at them over the next couple of days. So while the weather is still pleasant, I'm going to make the most of it, and today I'm going to get the rest of our potatoes planted. So these have been chitting, and I know there's a lot of debate about whether it's necessary to chit or not, and of course it isn't necessary to chit because the potatoes will grow without chitting. But you get a little bit of a head start perhaps with the first earlies if you do chit them. With the main crops it's a lot less important, and I have chitted them, and that way I get to select the tubers according to how many shoots they've got, or the sort of shoots they're developing, and I can be a little bit choosy about them at this stage, and that's the way I like to do it. But if you're not chitting the potatoes, it really doesn't matter. So what I'm planting out today are 3 pots of another first early, then I've got 9 pots for my main crops. So I'm going to plant 3 of Pentland Javelin, that's the first early, then 4 of Kerr's Pink, and 5 of Belle de Fontenay. So I'm going to be planting the first earlies and the main crop potatoes in a slightly different way. So the first earlies will tend to produce their tubers in a layer, and if I plant this pot with just a tuber down the bottom, I will get some potatoes in this region, but probably nothing higher up. So for these I will plant 2 near the bottom and another 2 higher up in the opposite orientation. Now that's exactly how I planted the second earlies on a previous video, so I'm not going to show that process again. I will leave a link to that video in the description. So the main crop potatoes are capable of producing tubers all the way up the pot, and for that reason you can just plant those at one level. So in a tub this size I could plant, say, 2 or 3 tubers, but it's not really the number of tubers that's important, it's the number of stems that are produced, and some of these have a huge number of shoots. I mean, there's more than a dozen on this tuber, and that is far too many to get a reasonable sized potato. So if you want big potatoes, you want fewer stems. If you're happy with smaller potatoes, then you can allow them to produce more stems. So I'd quite like a bit of a mixture. So I'm going to sow 4 pots of Kerr's Pink, 2 of those I'd like large potatoes, so I will rub off most of the shoots for those 2 pots, and in the other 2 I will let them produce as many stems as they like, and I'll have smaller potatoes from those. I will do something similar with the Belle de Fontenay. I will rub off most of the shoots for 2 pots of those, and then allow them to produce whatever they like for the other 3. So in that way you can have some control over the size of the tubers that you're going to get later in the year. So that's probably all I want to say about the potatoes. I've already covered the potting mix I'm using in the previous video, and showed how I planted those out. So I will get on with that, and then I will return for some pricking out and potting on. Right, so on to some pricking out. So here I've got some celeriac. This is giant Prague. Now these were sown quite a few weeks ago. It's one of those that I like to get started early because it can be rather slow to germinate and then pretty slow to get going. But these are good sized seedlings now, and they will have a reasonable amount of root on them. So I was thinking about putting these into some reasonable sized cells, but I think I'm actually going to put them into some small pots instead. They'll have plenty of room there to grow on until I want to plant them out. So I've already prepared these pots with some potting mix, and all I'm going to do is lift up a clump of these plants and tease them apart. I've got plenty here, so I'm going to take the best ones. So I'll make a small hole in the pots. This is a nice light sowing mix, so it should be reasonably easy to tease these apart very gently. There we go. And so they've got quite a nice bit of root on, and I'm just going to pop that in the pot and just pinch that in. So I've pricked out 30 of the celeriac seedlings. They're potted up nicely, and I'll leave those to grow on before I plant them out into the beds. Now I'm not sure where I can fit 30 plants, so I'm sure that's more than enough for us. But I do have some spare seedlings in the tray, and I'll keep those in case anything happens to go wrong with any of these. I'll prick out some more. So next I have these cells which have been sown with Cavolo Nero, calabrese, cauliflower and some broccoli. Now these are just at the point where they could be moved on. I could certainly keep them in these cells for another week or so. Then they would be ready to be planted out. But I quite like to pot on the brassicas and grow them onto a more substantial plant before I set them out. And in that way I think they're a little bit more robust to any potential pest damage. So I think there's just about enough root with these now in order to be able to pot them on. So I'm going to move them into these fairly substantial 6-cell trays here, and that should give them plenty of room to develop a nice root system. I'll just make a sizable hole in each one of these to receive the plug. And I'm just going to pot on 6 of these for now. That's probably going to be plenty of plants for us. So I'll pick the best 6. I will leave the others for now, just in case something goes wrong with one of these. So yeah, you can see some nice fine roots here in this plug, but these are in a good condition to move on. So that is it. This soil is ever so light, so it's prone to falling apart when I take it out, but that's not a problem. So I'm just making sure that the hole is big enough to receive the plug, dropping it in and then firming that in nicely. So this is quite a quick process. So there they are, potted on, and I think they're going to be happier in there with a bit more room for the roots to develop and a bit more feed to keep them going until they're ready to be planted out. So next is a tray of tatsoi. Now this is probably best sown in the autumn, but this is quite an early sowing, and I'm going to put this in a fairly shady spot, so hopefully it won't run to seed too quickly. Now I could have potted these on, well, at least a week ago, but I didn't get around to it. So I'm going to pop these into small pots and grow them on again until they're a bit more substantial before planting out. So I'll make some holes here. These should have a reasonable bit of root on them. And I can plant those fairly deep in here. Well, that's the tatsoi done for now. I've still got plenty of seedlings if I want to prick out some more later. So my final job today is to move on these cabbage seedlings. So I've got Copenhagen Market and Brunswick. Now, these are still fairly small, but they're easy enough to handle with their large seed leaves. So I think I can move these on into modules at this stage, and maybe I'll think about potting them on further later on. And they've got a nice little bit of root on them. Seem to have a bit of grass in there, I don't want that. Oh, that one's very nice. That's the cabbages done, and I think that's probably enough for our purposes. I've still got some more seedlings if I want to prick out some more later. So that's it for the pricking out and potting on for today. Now, in a previous video I potted on some chard and some more brassicas, and they're ready to plant out. Now, I could put them out today, but I think I'm going to wait until after the cold weather has passed. It's only a few more days, and hopefully I'll get round to planting out later in the week. But that's it for this video, so thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.